What's up, all you little squirrels out there trying to get your nut? This is Hulk, Coach over here. We're hanging out with you guys back in with the Pro Football Pod at Pro Football _ pod on the Twitter machine. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below, because for every 500 subscriber benchmark, 500,000, 1,500, you got it. We're giving away a free jersey to one of you lucky viewers. We've upped the offer. We're just trying to give away stuff out here. If you are going to your local games and your local tailgates, keep an eye out for a Pro Football Pod member. We might be giving away stickers. We might be giving away some, lanyards for your keys. We might be giving away koozies that may or may not have a fun little beverage in it for you guys. So, hey, we're here for the people. Tell your friends, hit that button, hit that noti button up in the top. This episode for you guys is the do not draft list. These are guys, whether we're staying away from them because of where they're going in their ADP, average draft position, whether we just don't like their situation at all this season, bunch of different factors there. That's at least how I lined mine up. What was your game plan? Was it the same?
It was. I'd say that a few of them were because of devastating injuries and what the expectation of them is to come back. J.K. Dobbins last year was a great example of whenever he came back, people were like, oh, he's going to be fine. And then he didn't look at all like himself. And it takes time for some of these players to come back, especially from things like Achilles.
Yeah, and you always preach that too. Like, if a guy has an Achilles injury as a running back, you forever take them off of your board.
At least for the first year. Like Cam Akers last year, great example.
Yeah, great example. So let's just go ahead and start it. We both listed about 10 guys here for us. So who's your first guy on your do not draft list?
So DeAndre Hopkins, I think, is not worth drafting. He's already older, just in general. And then he also is dealing with injury already in the preseason. I know that he's going a bit later, but just this, in general, this team has so many question marks to deal with. And with an older player getting hurt,
bringing in Calvin Ridley.
Exactly. And 32 years old, if he was coming into the season fully healthy with no hamstring or leg issues, I think he'd be fine. He's going in the ninth round, but I think you pick up other value in that area. Rome Odunze is going in the ninth round. Javonte Williams is going in the ninth round. Jonathan Brooks, Brian Robinson Jr., Christian Watson is going after DeAndre Hopkins. And I think all these players are going to have more value. Obviously, it's still early preseason. We're keeping an eye on injuries, especially lower body injuries for receivers on their plant foot and things like that. They're very, very important to track.
Yeah, I agree on all fronts. And it is one of those things with D-Hop too, to where you have to separate the player from the name almost. And it's his team. Is Will Levis going to make the jump? Like I said, they brought in Calvin Ridley. They also brought in Tyler Boyd. And with bringing in Tony Pollard and having Tajay Spears back there as well, my whole thing is where are the opportunities going to be for him? So is he going to end up just being more of a red zone threat? And like you said, he is getting older. He's battling injuries early right now. So I can't really argue too much with D-Hop being on the list there. There's a lot of players in the league to choose from here. So we already kind of went over it. Our lists are completely different. My number 10 of do not draft, and I know this kind of contradicts everything that we've said, especially if you go back and watch the tight end episode that just dropped as well. So yeah, go back and watch that and then come back to this point. Isaiah Likely. And for the sole purpose of, like I did mention in the tight end episode, take away this past season, and Mark Andrews typically will give you 15 minimum games played. So by drafting Isaiah Likely, yes, you're drafting him in the late bottom round, but I would rather take a flyer on somebody and just try to be quick to the waiver wire.
I like that.
And so that's where, to me, it would almost be a waste of a pick, because if Mark Andrews stays healthy, you're going to end up keeping him on your roster till about week 5 or week 6. Mark Andrews is blowing up, and you're going to drop him. And then if Mark Andrews does get hurt, okay, well, now I'm going to try to pick him back up. Well, this is the position you would have been in had you drafted somebody else anyways.
And you could have gotten somebody
Take
like
a
a
flyer
Kendre
on a
Miller.
rookie.
Like there's a
Or
lot of people here.
A Jalen Polk.
Yeah,
For
Jalen
New
Polk is a
England.
great call.
Like, or a Javon Baker for New England. Like, just one of these rookies coming in with a rookie quarterback. It happens all the time.
I mean,
They'll just
shit,
explode
Joshua
with
Palmer
somebody.
is going at 151 as potentially the most targeted player on that team. I mean, he's
Outside
the
of
only.
Ad McConkey.
I mean, he's the only player that's
Yeah.
returning in the
Yeah,
receiving game.
he's the vet.
And you're going to get him 2 rounds earlier, basically the final round of your draft. Take Josh Palmer instead of taking Isaiah
Most
Likely.
drafts, he'll probably end up dropping to the 17th because that's
Yeah.
the spot where people are throwing darts. And like I said, most people are going for rookies or young guys that are being overlooked. So, yeah. So who do you got next on your list there at number 9?
For this one, we got to go a lot higher on the list. I think that DJ Moore is being overdrafted. Currently, DJ Moore is the 41st player off the board in half PPR leagues. And last season, he saw 136 targets, 96 receptions, and 8 touchdowns. And I think that that would be a phenomenal place to take that type of player. But they just added 2 phenomenal receivers in Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze. And I think his opportunities are going to be a lot less than what people are expecting. Yes, he did just get paid heavily, but I think that's why he might even get overdrafted. And at the end of the 3rd round, I don't want a player that has to compete in the best wide receiver room. I would much rather take a guy like, Devonta Smith is the 2nd best receiving option on his team, and you get to take him 7 picks later. Mark Andrews is going after them. Dalton Kincaid. Malik Neighbors is the
Amari Cooper.
best receiving option. Amari Cooper,
Yeah.
best receiving options on their team. And there's nobody else that's catching the ball besides them. So you know that they're going to get fed. I would much rather have those guys than have DJ Moore. It's not an injury thing. It's not a talent thing. It's just an opportunities thing.
Yep. No, I fully agree with you. Keenan Allen coming in. Yes, DJ Moore is a vet, but they're different kind of vets. Like Keenan Allen to me is that savvy vet that, is just gonna, and he's from California. So, I mean, Keenan Allen, we saw him at the pro day for Caleb Williams. Like they've been developing that relationship early for
Already.
him. He's going to be a great safety valve for him. Do not be shocked if Keenan Allen still gets 10 receptions a game
And you get
for about
him
70 yards.
2.5 rounds later.
Exactly. And not to mention Rome Odunze coming in with Caleb. Like they're coming in both as 1st round rookies together. Like that can't be overstated for the connection that they're going to be able to develop as well. So I fully agree with the opportunity there. And that leads me into my next guy at number 9 is Dalton Schultz. I just do not see any viable opportunities for him for me to want to draft him. I'll take almost any other tight end over him at that point where he's going right now. Cause it's not like his draft position. He's going high. He's going in about the 11th round, but I still think I'd feel better with Pat Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, even Luke Musgrave, maybe. Like, so with Stephon Diggs coming in, Nico Collins, Tank Dell, they brought in Joe Mixon as well. They've still got Dameon Pierce there. I think he's going to be very touchdown dependent.
Agreed. He was very up and down last year. In games that he didn't have a touchdown, it was very unlikely for him to surpass 7 or 8 points. He only did it 2 times all season long. All the times that he surpassed 7 or 8 points, it was because he had a touchdown. Against Cincinnati, he had 9, and Tennessee, he had 7.8. And his targets were relatively high in a few games. He had 10, 11, and 11. That was games that they didn't have Tank Dell. And honestly, the fact that they added Stephon Diggs with Tank Dell coming back and Nico Collins, there's just a lot there. I think that if everybody sleeps on him, I might pick him up as my 2nd tight end at the very end of a draft,
Hmm.
but I'm not really excited about it at all. I don't think that there's any real opportunity, but if I only need him for 1 week and it's against a weak opponent, I might pick him up on the waiver wire, like things like that. But I definitely agree with you. Drafting him isn't a safe option at all.
Yeah, it's not something that tickles my pickle, like we're just not feeling it really. So we'll kind of just keep rolling here. Number 8 for me, Jared Goff. Jared Goff for me, I just don't think he's going to really. He's to me, it's not necessarily. I think he's bad. Like if I played the weight on a quarterback game, and I decided to take him in the 10th round, okay. My whole thing with him is I feel like he is capped as far as what he's going to be able to give you fantasy wise. For for the sake of the running game is only going to be better, and with you having, if unless Jamison Williams takes that next step to where they have deep playability, I just don't see Jared Goff giving you stellar performances fantasy wise for me to be like, yes, let me just wait on Jared Goff specifically. Like that's the guy I'm targeting. He's one to where if I take somebody early and then I come back with him as my quarterback too, okay, that's fine. And for the simple fact of I'm pretty sure aside from 3 or 4 games this season, he plays every single game in a dome this year.
Which is amazing.
For him, it's huge because he plays terrible outside, especially if there's weather.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going with that. Who do you got at your number 8?
I'm not disagreeing with you at all on Goff. He's the 13th quarterback off the board. I think that he's falling into like a relative realm, but Jaden Daniels goes 1 pick after him. Upside alone means that I'd take Jaden Daniels over Jared Goff, especially as my quarterback 2. Like, fuck yeah. I'm taking Jaden Daniels and hoping that he totally
Just
blows
give me
up.
75% of what Lamar Jackson gave us in his first full season play.
Exactly. Trevor Lawrence is my quarterback that I'm absolutely just not drafting this year. I know that last year he dealt with a lot of injury. His completion percentage was very bad. He only had 21 touchdowns, but it's the 14 interceptions. Like, injury aside, 14 interceptions is way too much for a player that only has 21 touchdowns that throws 564 passes. Like, he wasn't very efficient with the ball.
His receivers did him no favors unless that was named Christian Kirk or Evan Ingram.
And I think that he has both
Calvin
of them
Ridley and Zay Jones
are
both
gone.
got gone.
But I don't think that Gabe Davis is an improvement over either Zay Jones or Calvin Ridley. And I can't tell you that Calvin Ridley is not better than Brian Thomas Jr. right now as a raw prospect rookie.
He hasn't even said. We saw one highlight in the preseason.
Yeah.
Against, I don't know who it was against. I can only assume it was a backup corner. So like.
So I think that he's not at all safe. I think that nobody's going to overdraft him, and he's absolutely going to fall into your spot in your lap. I think Kirk Cousins is a better pick than him. I think Aaron Rodgers, Matt Stafford are easily players that I would take over this guy. I mean, I would rather not draft a second quarterback at all, or take Baker Mayfield. Like that's probably the end of the quarterbacks I'd even really look at. But I'm just
so it's one of those you just rather not touch it. Somebody else can play with that fire.
Exactly, and I've picked him up in the past before. I generally do 5 or 6 leagues a year, so like I'll take a little waiver on one of my leagues on a player like Trevor, and it's the thing that can totally bite you in the ass. So this is definitely a year not for me.
And so who you got at number 7?
I'm doing T.J. Hawkinson. I know we talked about him in the tight end video. His injury is what has me scared the most. He's going to miss a lot of time. I don't think that he's worth drafting. Exactly what you said about likely is what I think is likely to happen with T.J. Hawkinson. I think that somebody's going to draft him as their second tight end a little bit later in the draft, but they're going to have to overdraft him because they're going to be afraid someone else is going to take him, which means that they're going to be stuck holding him on their bench for 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, we're going to be almost at the end of the trade window by the time he's even going to start. And at that point, like if you're not already making the playoffs, then there's not a lot that you're going to be able to do. So I think that he's just too much of a liability. So I'm not putting him on any of my teams.
I agree on most aspects, aside from if you don't draft him, you're not going to get him off the waiver. Like somebody will draft him, and I would be a person to sacrifice a spot and just keep him there for 6 to 7 weeks. I'll just deal with it until he comes back healthy, because then I have a solidified tight end 1 or a really high-end flex position, especially in deeper leagues. Like if you're playing in 12, 14-man leagues out here, that tight ends can get used in the flex spot more often than what you would like to see.
High upside guys that you could take instead of him are Jameson Williams, Brian Thomas Jr. You could take Cole Kmet as the starting tight end on his team, Zach Charbonnet as the backup to Kenneth Walker, who is going to miss 2 or 3 games this year at least. Khalil Shakir doesn't make me too happy, but even Romeo Doubs from Green Bay. I mean, I know that there's a lot of mouths to feed there, but he stayed relatively healthy throughout his career, and he's been very solid in camp. All signs are pointing to him being one of the starting 2 wide receivers. So I just think that all these high upside guys in the 11th to 13th round, Jacoby Myers, like they're all going to do a lot more for your team to make it to the playoffs. And if you never get Hawkinson, then you never get Hawkinson. Tight end doesn't matter that much in fantasy anyways. If you do get him, but you didn't do well enough in the first 8 games to make the playoffs, then I think you're going to kick yourself in the ass.
Yeah, and like I said, with what I would do with him, like I said, just stashing him, that would be in the matter of I had to wait on my starting tight end, so I ended up having to get a David Njoku, a Brock Bowers.
Okay.
And then I'm like, okay, let me just take a little insurance policy for late in the season type of thing. Okay. Try to get this going a little quicker here down the list. My number 7 and my number 6, we'll see which one sparks you the most. 7, I've got Kyren Williams, and number 6, I've got Terry McLaurin.
Okay. Kyron's interesting for him to be on your list. I know he's taken really, really early, but Blake Corum is a 3rd-round pick running back. Kyren saw 95% of the snaps last year whenever he was healthy, and even whenever he didn't see 95% of the snaps, he was still very, very efficient with his touches. So I like Kyren a lot, like at pick 15.
So I'm not big on him for the fact of kind of what you just mentioned, like looking at his touches at 228 attempts, as well as 48 targets out of the backfield. Like that's 276 times they tried to get this guy the ball. And that was almost virtually because they didn't really have anybody behind him that they felt good about. That's going to change this year with Blake Corum coming in. I think Blake Corum is going to allow Kyren to get some rest. But also after, Kyren, we did see that mid-season injury from him. He was getting plenty of work beforehand too. But my thing with him is he's a running back. Like, how often do we really see running backs lasting all season? And after as much work as he did get with 22... almost 300 touches, and the guy missed 5 games. Like, that's an insane amount of workload. Like 20 plus rush attempts in weeks 13 through 17 at the end of the year. That's my whole thing, is I just don't see the whole workhorse thing coming out of him again this year. So because of where he's being drafted at, that's why I'm not touching him. Now, if he was going in the 3rd, 4th round, yeah, okay, you could talk me into it. But to take him in the late first in a deep league, early 2nd, yeah, I'm good. I'll kind of find poison somewhere else.
I know we talk a lot about handcuffs and how, in general, they're not really a safe thing to do anymore because you're betting on injury to happen, and there's a lot of other players that you can take later. Blake Corum's going in the 11th round. At this point, you are looking for high upside guys like Jameson Williams and all the guys we mentioned a few minutes ago. I think that this is an opportunity where I would look handcuff. And I think that in a handcuff situation, if I get both of the only two pieces that are ever going to play for Sean McVay's backfield, then I'm very happy. So that's my strategy. Is if I take Kyren Williams, I might take Blake Corum in the 10th round before a player like Jerome Ford, before Gus Edwards, before Ezekiel Elliott. Absolutely. Trey Benson is going before Blake Corum as well because of the upside that he has in James Conner. That's another situation where if I take James Conner in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, wherever he's going, I'm taking Trey Benson. Like, I want to have that whole backfield, and at that point I know I have the whole thing to myself. My two players that I think are not worth drafting at running back are Austin Eckler and Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb saw the most gruesome injury we've seen in years. I mean, his leg was wobbling around, dislocated from his knee. I think that even whenever he does come back, he cannot possibly look like the Nick Chubb of old. But at the beginning of the video, we talked about J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers. These guys suffered Achilles injuries. Those are devastating. He tore every single ligament in his knee.
His leg fell off.
Yeah, basically.
It just exploded on national TV.
Austin Eckler, the Washington Commanders have talked a few times about the usage that they plan on using him for. It's not a heavy usage. Brian Robinson is a very good young back. I think he's just going to be there to supplement him, not take over his role in any aspect. He also has a young quarterback that threw the ball to running backs 20 times last year. Like, he only dumped off the ball 20 times, Jaden Daniels and LSU. Now, obviously, the difference between Austin Eckler and Jaden and all the running backs that they had last year is a massive difference from an LSU running back to him.
With having Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr., he didn't really have to dump it off very much because he had 2 first-round wide receivers out there tearing it up.
But it's not something that he does, so I think that Austin Eckler... at any draft position, it's not
Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels, rather than dumping it off, is going to look to run, especially in his rookie year. So yeah, I agree with you there as well, and that's kind of why I'm down on Terry, like I said, at number 6.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and just bang out our top 5 right here. My 5 through 1, I've got Zay Flowers at 5. We mentioned it in the tight end episode. I don't think he's going to get much work. Josh Jacobs at 4. I think he's going to probably lose some goal line work to A.J. Dillon. And then Austin's guy, Marshawn Lloyd, I think might end up coming in and stealing some work from him as well. Aaron Rodgers, I have at number 3. I don't really want any part of Aaron Rodgers. While he may come back and be a solid quarterback still, we're looking at a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
He might be fine with where he's going. I just think there's better options fantasy purpose wise. Like, for the Jets, he'll be fine. Like, they just need competency. Number 2, I have Derrick Henry. I think he's going to be very touchdown dependent. I don't see him getting much work. He's another guy. He's a running back on the wrong side of 30. Yep. And we just know, especially for running backs, 30 is really a drop off. Now, he is an outlier because he's a refrigerator that can come at you at 20 miles an hour. And his off-season workout regimen is just absolutely insane. For me, though, where he's going at in drafts in the late 2nd, early 3rd, I would just rather take guys like Devon Achane, Isaiah Pacheco, James Cook, Joe Mixon. Like, there's just some guys there I'd rather have. And then number 1, Stephon Diggs.
Okay.
I just think that in Houston, Tank Dell and Nico Collins already have the relationship with CJ Stroud. It's built in there already. I think with Joe Mixon coming in, they are going to lean on the run game like they did a lot last year. For as great as CJ Stroud was, it's not like he was out there throwing it 45 times a game. So I just don't think he's going to have very much opportunity, especially where he's going in drafts right now. Now, I believe Nico Collins is going ahead of him in drafts like he should.
He is.
But for me, with Stephon, I'd rather have Tank Dell. Like, Stephon Diggs is going in the fourth, fifth round. Tank's going in the sixth, seventh, eighth round. Like, I'd rather have Tank Dell with where his value is.
So, Mike Williams, I don't think is worth drafting for the same reasons of what you said about Aaron. We don't know what to expect from him. Mike Williams needs Aaron Rodgers to be good, whereas Garrett Wilson does not. Jordan Addison is already dealing with the drunk driving or whatever it is that hasn't really happened yet. I think he's also dealing with a small injury. He has a lot of question marks around him, but he's getting way overdrafted. Jordan Love, I love as a player, and I think that offense is going to be really good. But 10th quarterback off the board with limited rushing capabilities. Guys like Jaden Daniels are going after him. He's getting drafted around the same time as like Zach Moss, the number one running back for his team, as Jaylen Warren, high upside player. Deontay Johnson is getting drafted after him. I think all these guys add more value to me, and I'd rather take Matt Stafford a little bit later. Mm-hmm. And Trey McBride. So Trey McBride is, if you watch the tight end video, I gave a really in-depth on what I think his issues are, but it's just that he's not in the same situation that he was in last year. He's going to have to fight for targets, whereas last year he was basically gifted every single target that was available. I think Michael Wilson takes a step. Bit of free insight for you guys out there. We'll give our top players to draft in the next coming weeks, but Michael Wilson will be on my list 100%. I think that everyone's sleeping on this kid. In a very small sample size, he looked very good last year, and he was basically the only guy there besides Trey McBride. So I think that I would rather take Trey McBride or Michael Wilson much, 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 much later, get a piece of that offense, than I would take Trey McBride above players like Dalton Kincaid. Like, we talked about him in the tight ends too.
That's where I do get you as far as the do not draft list with Trey McBride, as well, where I think Trey McBride is going to be perfectly fine. I do agree with you with where he's going right now in the fourth, fifth round. There are better options behind him with Kincaid, Pitts, Ingram, Njoku, like Kittle. Like, I mean, there are guys to where it's not like you have to just dive in on Trey McBride because it's just the ultimate guy you have to get. But, for the first time in a while, too, there's 7, 8, 9, almost 10 fantasy viable tight ends.
Yeah.
And it's normally like 3 and then pray.
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be these high upside guys, but...
Yeah, exactly. So, hey, if you hate what we said about your guys or you think we're just absolute idiots, that's fine. Throw it down in there in the comments. I love constructive criticism. Give it to me, baby. Hit that subscribe button down below. 500 subscribers giving away a free jersey at @ProFootball_pod on the Twitter machine. Catch us at a possible tailgate near you, especially somewhere here in the Southeast in the Carolina region. TulsiRoseTea.com is the sponsor. We love you guys. Peace out. Boop, boop.